I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Carpe diem. Seize the day.
Well, that ought to do it.
Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch?
Welcome to Sensible Mischief. I am your host, Lance Nelson, and with me today I have Brent and Kolleen Degraff. They are from my old alma mater.
Yeah.
I was
You can do it.
Your old school.
Thanks,
Lance. That was just great.
It was the perfect setup. Liahona Preparatory Academy. These guys
There you
founded it 22 odd years ago, or at least they were part of it for 22 years.
Yeah.
We are up in Idaho at the moment, and I will not say the exact location because I
Thank
feel
you.
like it's a secret.
We are literally on the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
All I kept thinking on the way up here is like, why would anyone live up here? And then I saw your house and I was like, okay, I get it.
We're surrounded by beautiful trees, wildlife, moose tromp through my front yard, deer stop at my front
And
window.
we're talking about him, right?
Yes, we are.
He's my deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. You and I were talking, we spent 22 years with a school and with a video program.
Yeah.
When we retired, it was like, okay, we're just going to move away from everybody. We didn't plan on moving. We really didn't plan on living here full time.
No,
Yeah,
it was
going to
a
be
cabin to begin
just
with.
a cabin. It was going to be a log cabin. It was going to be like you have in college where you have cinder block and bricks and
Shells.
planks across it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're going to do that. But little by little by little, this thing, we were sitting actually in church one day,
yes.
and you said,
We're supposed to live there.
we're supposed to live here. And I turned to her and I said, it's about time you figured that out. Because it hit me like months before.
It had.
But
it
it's
had.
a great place. It's a small town, like, I'm not going to say
Yeah.
how small, but really small.
Yeah.
3 numbers in the number. Oh,
That's crazy.
really
there
small,
is.
but it's good people.
But
Good.
lots of tourist stuff
Yeah.
here as well.
But really
So,
good, down-to-earth people.
yeah, really good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, you did graduate. Did you graduate from Liahona?
I did. Well, I didn't get.
Or did you just leave?
I got a
Lance?
GED.
Okay.
But like I didn't like it was
So
the,
you just
could
left.
get the paid graduation or the free one, and I was like, because I remember at graduation you were sitting there and you were like, give us a kiss, Lance, and I grabbed your face and I kissed your cheek, and you were like, and I just remember you had
You're
a
gonna
shock-
die.
You had a shocked face, and you're like, well, I asked for it.
Which was usually my response to anything you answered in class.
Basically.
I asked for it, so okay,
Well,
I'll
I
take
asked
it.
for it. That checks out.
Well, I'm sure we were celebrating that you made it to that day.
We were.
Yes. I remember Wilburn, Sister Wilburn, one time told me, she was like, Lance, you're lucky you're cute. And I was like, thank you. I was like, I don't know how to take that, but thank you, Sister Wilburn.
It's okay. She scared me too.
Tracy
So it was
Wilburn.
okay. Yeah.
She's a redhead.
Incredible English teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was
she's
an
great.
incredible English
Genuinely,
teacher.
like one thing I love about you guys is you instilled, like, there are 2 people that I attribute my love of history. One is my Cub Scout leader, who just genuinely was an amazing guy. He was 40 years old. I remember like when he left my old ward back in the day, he was like, I'm going to miss this family, and my best friend, Lance Nelson. And I was like 14 years old at the time, and I was just like, wow, Brother Whitney, thank you, man. And then, so he would talk about history all the time, and then I moved out to Utah, and then we started going to your school
Wait a
and
minute.
stuff. And
Where did you
Now,
live
you
before
took the-
I was from Virginia originally.
Yeah, didn't you take the DE
I'm
program
from Fredericksburg,
beforehand?
like Angel of Marie Heights. Like
Yeah.
my mom would always be like, let's go check out history sites. And that's the thing I love about East Coast growing up there is like you can everything's
so
history,
close, yeah.
as opposed to
From Civil War to
Yeah.
American
Yeah,
Revolution.
because we would do, as you know, we would do these service trips every summer.
Yeah.
And take the kids, 100, 150 kids with us.
Yeah.
And when we went back to the East Coast, for the kids there, it was like, well, we've already seen all these really cool things.
Yeah.
Where are we going to go now?
Yeah, seriously.
And so it was hard to come up with something that was new for them.
Yeah.
But I loved it. We've talked about it now that we're retired.
Some of our favorite memories
And
came from those
I
super
would
trips.
rather go back to D.C. and Virginia
Yeah.
and some of those places than even to Mexico.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
they're
in fact,
just
my
awesome.
reaction when I finally got to see the Lincoln Memorial, it just literally took my breath away, and I
that's
got
crazy.
Oh, it
I
did
got
more than
emotional.
that. It didn't. Yeah. We got out of a taxi, and neither one of us had ever been there. And we used to do these pre-trips where we'd go plan the trip that was going to happen a month later. And we get out of a taxi on the side of the Lincoln Memorial, and we walk around, and so the reflecting pool's down this way.
And it's a little later in the day, so
Yeah.
it's not
Okay.
quite as many people.
And we walk around talking, kind of chatting together around the corner, and she stops when she sees the front of the Lincoln Memorial, and she just breaks down. it was just an incredibly emotional, touching moment for her. But understandably, you know, there you've got Lincoln and everything that it stood for. And her family, she has a lot of family that is from the
Fought in the
South.
Civil
So
War. Well, they fought on both
surprisingly,
sides.
she's still...
Okay, I was like, which
No,
side?
no.
The War of Northern Aggression.
Even with that, she...
That's what my family called it back
I
then.
used to, you probably have to cut this out,
No,
but I used to get a lot of garbage from some of the, we had, you know, the distance education program, from kids in Alabama and Georgia, when I would talk and call it the Civil War.
Yeah.
And when we went live on our program, I would get their responses here. They could text their responses to me. And these kids would get so irate and they'd say, no, it's the War of Northern Aggression. And I'm going, just kind of leave it where it is, okay?
We kind of won that, so like I think we're gonna call it what we want to call it.
I have relatives on both sides, and one was a father and a son.
Yeah.
The father was fighting for the South, and his son.
Tell them
Well,
the
it was
story.
actually his father-in-law, and his daughter had to try and explain why her husband had gone off to fight for the North.
The last
And
book that we wrote, we were looking for the very best stories we could find about American history, and we included the story of her, was it great whatever grandfather, when he went to tell the story. It's really cool.
Oh, well, it was, he had two sons fighting in the Civil War, and all of a sudden he knew something had happened. I can't even remember the city, it was just like Spartansburg or somewhere, but anyway, he knew that something had happened to one of them, and he set off, and sure enough, his one son had been killed in a battle, and he went off to find his body, and the guards weren't going to let him take the body and leave with it to bury it. And I can't remember the little miracle that happened exactly, but the other son that was still alive managed to finagle that so his dad could take his brother's son home and bury him.
Yeah. So she has things in her family history that I don't have. Yeah. She's got those Civil War stories that, you know, mine are like the Great Depression. Yeah. What did you learn out of that? But yeah, hers is Civil War stories, and they're really cool.
All I got in my family is my mom did family history, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we're related to Blackbeard. Apparently, we're one of a bar wench that he had an affair with." And I'm just like, "Is that why I like sword fighting so much?"
Just like to stick people.
Like, it's that, and my mom. I don't know if this is true or not, but she's always like, "Yeah, we're related to Pocahontas," and I'm like, "So I can paint with the color of the wind?" Because like I don't feel like that's true, but she always says it.
Yeah, we have our daughter. Looked up your mom did research, and she's related to Pocahontas too. And our son then looked up to see how many people, or what the odds are, and it's like 1 in 5 billion that you're actually related to Pocahontas. But it sounds really cool.
It sounds cool. Yeah, but I'm just like, we're not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Exactly.
it was fun, the things that we got to do with Liahona. Anything from the school to what you went on, the youth conferences where kids would come from around, the service trips. We look back at it now, and I don't miss the grind, because you know, you and I were talking when we started at VHSs. Yeah. And then we went to DVDs, and then we went to online, then went to live. Right. And to show you how stupid I was.
You're so old.
This is really, we'll tell you. We buy 20 different VCR machines to duplicate the tapes on.
Yeah. Have a whole bank of them in our bedroom.
Next, 3 feet from my bed, all along the bank of the wall right there.
And he has to get up every 2 hours.
But the problem was, I didn't know that they had timers on them. Yeah. And so at 30 minutes, they would all click off. So Mr. Genius here, Mr. Technology, I figure I had seen, what was it, where they wear the cone on their head with Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson's movie.
To keep the aliens away. Yeah. So I figured, okay.
He thinks they're talking to each other, right?
I think they're like communicating somehow. So I wrapped them all in tinfoil. And I'm going, finally, I'm going to sleep 2 hours. It won't be 30 minutes. 30 minutes, boom, 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 boom. They all click off. Like, what? Finally, one of the kids from the school goes, Brother Graff, you do know they've got a timer on them. I went, yeah, of course it does.
Factory preset.
But at the very beginning, every 2 hours, once we got that solved and I took the tinfoil off of them, every 2 hours, I was up, switching the whole bank of 20 out, putting 20 more back in. That's why I was a little bit off some days. But it was that's not my finest moment. That was the reason. Yeah.
No other reason.
I used to walk into you guys, I remember, and I would walk in, and when I'd only gotten like an hour and a half, 2 hours sleep, I would warn you and say, okay, guys, I didn't get much sleep last night, so this could be a little off the wall class. And
But
then you
some of
guys
his
fed
best
off
ones-
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of his best ones and some of his funniest ones
Yeah.
came from those days.
Seriously.
Survival skills. That's all it was.
Yeah, well, you would just get goofy and off you'd go. So
Well, that was pretty much 22 years. Yes, so just that. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. And we've talked about it. I miss, and you and I talked a little bit about it. I miss the research that it forces you to do when you're learning.
all the reading, he would read and read and read. Even after teaching for 20 years, he was still doing 4 hours of reading a night.
But I really miss the seniors. I like the older kids.
Yeah.
No offense to any of the younger ones, because they got old too eventually, like me. But I really miss the seniors because all my stupid jokes, you guys got.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Or you groaned because
no,
you'd heard
no,
them so
no,
many
they were
times.
good. For instance, we were talking about William Wallace. Sorry, you may have to get rid of it. It's a good joke. What did William Wallace use? You know who William Wallace was?
Of course I do. Yeah,
Okay.
Braveheart.
Yeah, William Wallace. What did he use to put pictures up on his refrigerator? Now, don't tell me he didn't have a refrigerator. It's the idea. What did William Wallace use to stick pictures up on his refrigerator?
I don't know.
Scotch tape.
I hate you. You're dead to me.
And here's
He has other bad ones.
here's my one technology joke, okay? Because tech is not my thing. How do you cool off your computer?
I'm scared. Is it Scotch tape again?
No. You open its windows. It's pretty good, Lance. You got to admit that one's pretty good. Could make a little money off of this. Very little, but
How many kids you got again?
no. When I'm dead, somebody will appreciate that.
They'll be telling them at
they'll
his
get rid of me
funeral.
because of that. But
Yeah, they'll be
It'll
telling
be
him
on
in
your
his funeral.
epitaph.
But I do miss those things. I miss that
you.
somewhat. But it is nice to be up here in the mountains. It's a different life. It's we
Hasn't
enjoy the
slowed
people.
down much.
No.
I thought retirement would slow down,
Yeah.
but so far not yet.
We did some figuring, and in the last 5 or 6 years, you've had like 5 or 6 operations.
No,
4.
that's you.
That's me. Never
That's
mind.
you.
Well, 2 of them were falling off of.
One, he fell off a roof of the
I fell off
elementary
an
building.
18-foot ladder, and then the other one was just like a couple months ago, just before we got COVID.
I think God's trying to send you a sign.
It is, and I'm
like-
just too stupid to listen.
Just pull him, but he's just like, I'm too. He's
Get
too
the man
stubborn.
off of a ladder.
The other one, I went up a ladder to the loft out here, and the next thing I know, it's this deja vu all over again.
I know. I felt so bad. I sent him up there to get canning jars, and next thing I know, he's on the floor bleeding.
I swear, I've got like this anti-guardian angel that's kicking the bottom of ladders out from underneath me. And then laughing at me. He's on the ground. Yeah, well, go in and the doctor, because it hurt, really
yeah,
hurt.
I could imagine.
And the doctor asked the doctor, "What's up?" He goes, "Well, you just broke your back. That's all." So
That's
I
it,
broke off
yeah.
some things on the back, and it was. But anyway, other than that, I haven't cut my leg off with a chainsaw.
You haven't
which
done
is
that.
what my boys swear that I'm going to do. But it's fun being up here. It's just it's kind of a throwback.
Yeah.
The things that I used to teach in history from back in the day,
Yeah.
I'm living back in the day now, and I think we enjoy
Well,
that.
and we could be off grid if we wanted to, but I don't want to be off grid. But we could be if we had to.
Unplug. Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to go backwards just a little bit, a little simpler time. Hard,
Yeah.
hard in lots of ways, but
is.
also a little more simpler where your concentration is on
Lance
just basic
knows
things.
it's hard because his car didn't make it all the way up the driveway because it's stuck in the snow.
So I was like, oh, this is just about as good a spot as it is. Just leave it.
So I go to
The
Walk
church.
up
middle
the
of the
rest of the
road, just like, we're just going to carry this.
So I go to
stuff the
church
rest
one day.
Yeah.
Go to church, and I'm talking to the people. I don't know where anybody lives because we're brand new in the
Yeah,
ward.
yeah.
And I'm talking to this guy, and I say, "Well, where do you live?" And he describes it, and it's like a quarter mile up the road from us.
Okay.
And I say, "Do you live there year round?" He goes, "No, I'm not that damn dumb." And I'm looking at him, and he goes, "And where do you live?" I went,
Just down the
"Down
road from
from you. I'm that guy that's that dumb." So yeah, we live up where most people that know us.
Yeah.
We live the furthest up the mountain that anybody lives year round.
Yes.
And right now we don't have much snow. We've got 2.5 feet out there.
Yeah.
But normally, I think I
Last
mentioned
winter it was 6, 7.
when I broke my foot, we came up and there was 7 foot of snow up on the porch. So I shoveled it off.
He
Kinda.
did. He actually did. I have a picture of it out there with his broken foot shoveling off the
Stupid.
snow.
Knows no
Yeah,
limit.
Your
Yeah.
stupidity knows no bounds.
That's what her mother said when she married me. Your daughter. Yeah. But, and if you look at where we started, I guess that makes me appreciate where we are
Yeah.
now. This is, you probably know, it's a second marriage for both of us.
Yeah.
And
It's been a long time of a second marriage.
Yeah,
but
we're pushing 30 years this year.
That's crazy.
She says it seems like an eternity. I thought that was a compliment for years.
Yeah.
Turns out it wasn't.
It is.
But
My favorite person in the world.
we kindly say that our
I just
exes.
remember you guys always doing the
Yes.
thing, and I'm
We
just
do.
like,
Yep,
that's
that.
cute.
Yep. But we kindly say our exes found somebody else while they're still married to us. But okay, it worked out for us and it worked out for them. But I remember when I didn't have many friends. Believe it or not, most people didn't want to talk to me.
Yeah, I get it.
You understand that? But I had this one friend that I taught a Sunday school class with, and she was leaving to go to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
to meet with somebody. I don't remember what it was. And she said, now listen, I've got a friend that works for, who was he? Some politician.
Bob Bennett.
Bob Bennett.
Oh, no, we were working for Richard Iyer.
Okay. She said, you need to call her by Sunday night at 9 o'clock. Because she said, I'm coming back at 9:30 on Sunday from Washington, D.C.
Now, mind you, she had been trying to get us together for
Yeah.
months, and neither one of us were cooperating.
Yeah.
But she goes, if you don't call her by 9 o'clock, I will never talk to you again. I'm going, dude, you're the only friend I've got. This is it. So finally, 8:38, you're sweating. I got to call this. Finding 9 o'clock rolls around, 9:30 rolls around.
Yeah.
Finally, at 8:45, I go, okay, I got to do this. So I pick up the phone and I dial. And she was living in Heber City with her mother.
Okay.
And I call, and on the other end, hello? And I say, hey, don't you hate this? This is, and then I go on for literally 15 or 20 seconds, and then this voice says, oh, you want to talk to my daughter. I was talking to her mom.
Don't you hate being set up
Yeah,
on
yeah.
blind dates?
Yep. So,
My mother got a big kick out of it.
I can imagine.
so there was nowhere to go but up from that one.
She's just like, I like him. I like this.
She did like him.
Yeah. So, and at the time, you were working at Salt Lake Community College, I think,
Correct,
weren't you?
yeah.
Teaching there.
Yeah, Richard lost the primary to Levitt,
Mm-hmm.
and so I transitioned from there to Salt Lake Community
And
College.
this will not breed confidence in anybody.
Okay.
You want to guess what I was doing?
Go
ahead.
There's a lot.
Something that he's really actually very good at. He was
what?
teaching Spanish with puppets to preschools.
To preschool kids. Yep. I
Wow.
had this huge trunk with probably 30, 40 puppets in them.
Okay.
And I would go in once or twice a week and teach Spanish or do songs. I knew that would, because this is not the image most people have of me that have been with me before. Excuse me, what?
Sock puppets.
No.
Sock puppets.
But I used to buy these puppets, or we would make them, but there's a lady
Yeah,
that made them, and they were awesome.
Yeah.
And so I teach them in Spanish, but when we met, I was teaching at 30 different schools with a puppet. That's what I did.
I actually had him come.
You were just like, oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's
No.
Well,
yeah,
I do declare, a gentleman caller, he must be mine.
it's not the kind of thing where you go, "Ugh." Teach with puppets.
I did actually have him come in and do a class, though,
Yeah.
for my college students, and they loved
once.
it.
Oh,
They,
once.
they thought he was terrific. So.
It's just when you're off the wall, you got to
Yeah.
find to express yourself, and it was puppets, and then I moved to you guys.
Yeah.
Kind of the
It's kind of the same
thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
But yeah, that's how what we were doing
Although
before
we
met.
almost didn't meet.
Okay.
Okay, no, wait. You may have to cut this one out, Lance, because right now, on camera, my wife is going to lie.
No, your wife is going to tell the truth because you can't remember where
She's
you
going
were.
to lie. This is for posterity. My wife is going to lie, and I'm going to sit here calmly and only interrupt her as needed. Go ahead. Tell them.
So during that conversation, we agreed that
Liar.
that we would meet, and I taught at Salt Lake Community College.
Yeah.
So I
What did you
set
teach
the
by
place. I taught communications
Okay.
and business communication skills
Okay, cool.
and public speaking.
Oh, love it.
But anyway, so
Makes
I don't
sense.
feel
yes,
insecure
so
or
I
anything.
set the place
I
where we
taught
were
puppets
supposed to
and
meet.
she's teaching.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean you're good at communication, but you try.
She just
Anyway.
insult me.
She did.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I set the place where we were supposed to meet. I described it to him,
Yeah.
right? And so when my class is done, I'm sitting on the bench where I'm supposed to be,
Yeah.
waiting and waiting
Okay.
and waiting.
Okay.
And he hasn't shown up.
30 years.
I'm thinking I've been stood up.
You're going straight. We were supposed to meet by the dean's office.
No,
and
we weren't.
by the dean's office. And so I wait, I look around, I walk around, and I'm really, at the time, I was really, because I had come out of, a previous marriage. I didn't want to meet anybody. Making eye contact with a woman is challenging for me at the time, honestly. Yeah. And so I'm walking around the hallways, trying to see if, they probably thought I was a weirdo because I'm glancing at women, trying to see if any of them were going, oh, are you waiting? So I'm glancing at them like this and looking away real quick, and finally I figure, okay, because obviously she's in the wrong place, not where we agreed that she would be. And so I'm walking back out to my van, which was a bad thing anyway when you're single and you have a van with nothing in the back.
This is more
it
like
doesn't,
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, it does, really.
Just like kept looking at women.
Yeah. But, it's...
Do you want to get in the back of my van?
Well, you're
Would you like to see my dungeon?
No, you're going to hear my pickup line. That was just the most pathetic thing in the world. Yeah,
Well,
you should be.
I was sitting on the bench where I had said I would be.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
No.
You
I'm
can
gonna be
tell
part
me
of
a
the big
really
lie.
awful pickup line.
But I'm walking out.
And I went out with you anyway.
And you know how things, what is that saying where history swings on small hinges or whatever it may be, but I'm walking out to my van and I just happened to glance to my left. I mean, a split second. And she had been reading something and she just happened to look up. And this is not for more than half a second. Yeah. And our eyes met. And there was something and I thought, okay. So I did what I would never, ever do.
And now that I know him, it's true. He would never normally have done this.
I walk over to her and I say something that at the time made sense. Now it's the cheesiest pickup line in the world. But I walk about 60 feet over to where she was sitting and I said, are you waiting for me? And she was
Please
kind
tell
of...
me you didn't say it like that.
No, I don't know how I said it. My voice was probably shaking. I don't know. She was kind enough to say, I think so if you are. So yeah. And that's how we met.
Yeah.
So we went to lunch at Dee's and he made me laugh the whole time. It felt so good to laugh. And I've been laughing for 30 years.
I get you.
But it was one of those things where you can honestly say, I mean, really honestly say it was love at first sight. And I had a little yellow 60-something Volkswagen Bug. Yeah. And I wasn't making a lot of money from teaching with puppets.
What?
Strange as it may seem, it wasn't.
You're not swimming and money?
Don't call me Mr. Sesame Street. No, I was
You're not just...
I used to get mad watching Sesame Street singing, you're making money and I'm making nothing. But I used to drive this little Volkswagen and it's horrible in the snow and I'm driving back.
And the heater didn't work.
Heater didn't work, defroster didn't work, and I'm on the way back going down by Park City, down. It's
because I lived in Heber.
Yeah. And the accelerator cable breaks. And so I pull over the side of the road and I'm not only not technical, I'm not mechanical.
Gotcha.
So what do? But I had a hanger. So I wrapped that around the accelerator cable, ran it through the outside window, and that's how I drove down and accelerator was pulling it like this as I shifted gears and with 3 of my boys in the back seat going, Dad! I said, play with the puppets and shut up. But it was love at first sight, and in spite of what her mother may have thought of me, it worked out. And we're 30 years now.
That's crazy.
29, I guess, actually.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
But that led to the school eventually. There was another school that was very much, it's kind of the foundation of what Liahona became.
Okay.
They'd been around for years before, and they needed a teacher in the town that we were living in. And so they asked me, thanks to the lady that was also working at her mother's health food store. We were both working there. I was doing puppets in the morning and health food store in the afternoon, which is another really awesome story because here am I, don't know a thing about health food. And her poor mother hired me, and I would go in with my Dr. Pepper and M&Ms and plop them down on the counter, and all these health food people were looking at me like, get away from me, because you just don't do that. But I would go in, and I would work there in the afternoon, but I worked with this lady in the morning, and they needed somebody to teach, and so she asked me to come
Audition.
Apply.
Yes.
Yeah, audition.
Yes.
So I did, and in spite of that, they still hired me. We worked there for, I don't know, how many years did we work for that school?
Only a couple.
A couple of years.
Yeah, it was 3 maybe?
Yeah. And then they were bought out by somebody, and just a long series of different schools, private schools.
Yeah.
We worked at another private school where they needed a history teacher, and because all we really ever planned on doing was distance education. We
Yeah.
weren't going to do a school, a brick and mortar school.
Right.
But we needed a class to teach to, and she needed a history teacher. So it kind of worked out, and I was their history teacher, and then I would film in front of the class and send it out to all our distance education students.
Yeah.
Well, they decided to change a little bit what their format was going to be.
They decided to become more public school-like.
Yeah, tell them what happened.
Which we were not.
Yeah,
And,
we believe firmly, as you know, in blending religion and academics together.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was going to become multi-denominational instead of LDS. And so she decided to hold a parent meeting and inform the parents as to the direction that she was taking her school. And she offered us the opportunity to explain that because of where she was going, we were going to split off and kind of what
She was
our
really nice,
philosophy was.
told
It was
us-
very nice.
yeah.
It was very nice of her.
Until-
And we had the parent meeting, and after the parent meeting, she had nobody talking to her, and they were all surrounding this one.
Yeah.
And I could see she saw the handwriting was on the wall, and she was not happy. And the next morning, we got a phone call.
Told me I couldn't pick up my camera, couldn't pick up anything.
Yeah. She was keeping our equipment, and he was fired.
So I had this big puppet dog, and I went down and threatened her with it. No, and no, I didn't.
No,
But yeah, it's so
no, we had to call the police to get our equipment.
we did. But it was one of those things that all along with Liahona happened, and you can say it was chance, you can say it was luck. I don't believe so.
Yeah.
But the day before, we
The
had,
parent meeting.
we had gone out, Kolleen and I, just to look around and see where we would film if we ever decided to just do our own thing. And we found a community center in South Salt Lake, and they would rent
Riverton.
us. Yeah, they would rent us the room 4 days a week. All we had to do was go in every day, put up the chairs, put up the tables, take them down, put all the camera stuff away every single day, and that's where we started. Was there, and. Literally the grace of God and the help of good friends, then it kind of grew from there.
Yeah. I was the scared one. He came home one day and said, "We're supposed to start our own."
Yeah.
And I was like,
Now,
"Get
mind
thee
you,
behind me!
we
I'm
had
not
we
doing
had a
that."
son in Ecuador as a missionary at that time.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we had a total of 6 kids.
Yeah.
Well, I guess at that time we only had 5.
Yeah, it's not many
But-
people that marry and automatically have 5 kids, but we,
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I was not excited about that idea.
Yeah.
And he kept pitching the pros to me, and I kept bringing up the cons.
No, she was
And-
crying in the bedroom. She was in tears about. I mean, she didn't.
was not excited about
She
being
didn't want me to
self-employed.
leave my
Imagine.
puppets. She was devastated about my puppets. So, yeah, it was a tough decision.
Can't come with this.
Well, yeah, right. But it was a tough decision.
Senor Mittens.
It was Senor Rossi, Senora. But it was a scary thing because, you're starting from basically nothing,
Yeah.
and you have no money because teaching didn't pay a lot and puppets didn't pay a lot. And fortunately, we had some very good people that heard about us, and they helped us out a little bit to get started. And we went from the center, the community center, to a business
complex.
complex. Where did we go from there?
Didn't we go to the
LDS Church
yeah.
was selling one of their old seminary buildings,
Yeah.
and so we bought that, and then we were fortunate enough
outgrew
to,
that, and then we built the new big building.
we were building a new building. In the meantime, we met where I think you were.
Yeah.
We met in an old evangelical church,
Yeah,
which was
that's-
really
that's
cool.
Where I started.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
we were
was
there
in
while we
that.
were trying to get the other building
Yeah.
done.
But Liahona almost didn't happen so many times, I can't even tell you. As a matter of fact, we were building the new building when we woke up one Saturday morning.
Yeah, our bank was Silver State Bank out of Las Vegas,
Okay.
and 2008 hit.
Yeah.
And we are in bed Saturday morning, and all of a sudden CNN announces that Silver State Bank has gone into receivership.
Yeah.
The FDIC has
She-
taken it over.
She comes straight up out of bed. I'm watching Sesame Street, but she comes
Of course.
straight.
Trying to hone the craft.
Yeah, really. I really wasn't paying attention. She came straight up out of bed. And,
And I said, that's our bank. That's who we have our building loan with. And all of a sudden, our building loan was no more. We couldn't get any more money.
Yeah.
It was a mess. It was an absolute mess. We were 3/4 of the way done with the building.
And
And
that's where it was going to end.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
where, yeah.
Liahona was ending there. It was
Yeah.
going into receivership or whatever they call it.
But because there have always been miracles where Liahona was concerned and where Brent and I have been concerned,
Yeah.
our builder just happened to be Brigham Ashton of the Ashtons. And he said, I will fund the rest of this building and pay off the subcontractors until you can get a loan to pay it off.
Which took,
It took years.
yeah, it took a number of years.
Yeah. So if we're not for him, there would still be a 3/4 finished building, with nowhere for Liahona to be.
It would have been a lovely,
The evangelical building was pretty fun, but I didn't want to be there forever.
I get you.
but it was one of the things that we saw in the history of, as Liahona went along, that too many times for it to be, like I've said, accident. Things happened that were not just chance. And it worked out.
It did. It did.
But we had, the classroom, the parts of Liahona that you know about, but, we had the school, we had the distance education program, we had the youth conferences, which were challenging, and then we had the super trips. But there were some really interesting things, and the really interesting of one of the ladies that helped us financially at the very beginning was quite free-spirited. And if you remember, they were big lodges, 2-story lodges.
With stairs.
Where the students would stay. And she taught the students how to take these mats that they would sleep on and surf down
The stairs.
these like 30 stairs.
I'm assuming I know who this person is.
You do know who it
As
is.
soon as you
you
started
do.
talking about it, I was like, oh, I know.
And when she
exactly.
sees this, she taught
see
you
you.
really. She taught our daughter how to do it, and we have 7 stitches on our daughter's chin to prove it. But it was they were fun. They were really fun. The service trips, some really cool things happened there. We took our kids, I say our kids, the school kids, about 150 of them, I think, on this one, down to some orphanages in Mexico City and in Puebla.
Right.
And on one of them,
Now, most of these kids have never seen poverty like this. This is poverty. Maybe not on the level of Africa, but where we went was pretty poor.
pretty close. And we went to one orphanage, and one of our students noticed that one of the little boys didn't have shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
So she took off her shoes and she gave them to him. And when it came time for us to get back on the bus, we're standing there.
And we realized all of these kids don't have shoes.
None of the
Where's
kids-
our kids with their
They'd
shoes?
all taken their shoes off and given them to the kids at the
Yeah.
orphanage. So we got to see some things that were just incredible over time, and it always tied into the students, as irritating as you were.
Yeah.
I mean students in
You
general.
can talk to my mom.
Okay, we did, Lance. But as challenging as some of those things were, some of the things that we got to see that we never would have seen before were because of just good kids and good families.
Very much so. I remember one time we went to one of the orphanages in Puebla, and when we got there, they had a half of a chicken in the fridge and about a fourth of a bag of rice in the cupboard, and that was all there was there.
Yeah.
And
so,
the Father John was
Yes,
his name,
yes.
was a diabetic, and he had medicine that he needed to take.
Yeah.
And he had taken the money that he had for that medicine, and he'd used it to buy food for the kids, and he was literally dying. So we were able to buy him some medicine.
yeah, we were able to show up at some opportune times and help.
Yeah.
Those are neat experiences and neat memories.
But we do miss those. We do miss those. And we even miss the students. We do.
Absolutely, we do.
It was,
Absolutely.
I think I told you that one of the things, and I think, and anybody that's been in Liahona, one of the reasons that we started it was, like I mentioned earlier, we firmly believe that I don't know how you teach history
Yeah.
without including God. I don't know how you do that.
No.
And I can handle so much of it, but there comes a point when you have to say, no, that's not the way it happened. But we decided that we'd put together stories from old books, because you won't find them in the new books.
Yeah.
Old history books. We're talking even back to the 1500s. So we started collecting and buying these old books and pulling cool old stories that talked about God's hand in American history or in world history in it.
Yeah.
And the goal had been to come up with about 150 pages worth of these cool old stories that talked about God's hand. And by the time we finished, the first edition has 750 pages, and the second will have another 750. So it's 1,500 pages of just what we were able to find. And it's the coolest thing in the world to be going through one of those books and see a story that is so different from the way it's told today.
Yeah.
And when you tell it to students, it suddenly clicks. It's not academics here and religion here. They're blended together.
Yeah.
But it's stories from people who are actually there
Yeah.
or that it actually happened to. so it's not passed down hearsay.
Yeah.
We have a good friend. In fact, they were the ones that financed the school when we had to pay off the builder. And she says that God loves Brent best when it comes to books, because he can be needing something in a certain subject, and he'll walk into DI or an old bookstore or Eborn Books or something, and there's the book.
Yeah.
You know, and he comes home with it, and it's like, look what I found. And the
wanna
rest of
know-
us are like, we're trying to find something.
You've heard of Hoarders. You know, there's a TV show called Hoarders.
Yes.
Well, so you know how far we took that. My library now has 8,000 books in it, and they're almost all of them are pre-1945, with the vast majority being the 17 and 1800s.
Yeah.
So
But we want history that actually comes from the mouth of people
Yeah,
who
yeah.
lived it,
Obviously,
not
yeah.
not that rewritten stuff as to, well, let's put our slant on it, let's
Yeah.
give it this agenda. We want it from the actual people who were there.
we were speaking at a conference one time, and a lady came up afterwards and she said, "I just love the way you put God back into history." And my first thought was, I wish I had that power. I could, no go. But I said, you know, I don't know how to teach it any different.
Yeah.
So, but I think
Well, and you said we didn't put him back, we just never took him out.
never took him out.
Yeah.
Yep. But that was part of the challenge as we went along. We were told by people that had private schools before us that you can't be accredited and teach religion. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You can. You just have to, if you say you're going to teach a certain thing, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
But then there's always the challenge of things that have never been taught, stories that have never been told that way. And there's always people challenging you, so we always made sure that we documented and footnoted everything, because people have never heard a story a certain way. And when you tell people, and you won't remember this story because I think you were probably asleep that day, but yes, because yes, I was. But when you tell people it was providential that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, everybody looks at you, what are you talking about? Thousands of young men died that day. But you go through and you list where even the main admiral said, yes, it was, you know, if it had not happened this way, then America would have lost the war. So it's just neat to be able to point those things out. And here's the real key.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you do with all of this, Lance, but this is the most important thing to us. And it is this. And that is that we want the kids to see God's hand in history all the way through. Because if you only throw in a story here or there, then the inclination is to think, well, God will be there occasionally. He's not there occasionally. I want them to see all the way through history, you see his hand. And the idea being that look for him all the way through in your life. And maybe he'll take you to the brink. Most times he will. As in when Washington wrote to his brother, said the game's pretty near up. We've lost. He's right to the brink. But we want them to have confidence and faith to know that he was here during the Spanish Armada. He was here during this time. He was during this time. And he'll be there for you. That's the idea the reason that we went through all that stuff that we went through.
Yeah. And when you see those miracles that happened in history, that on those hinges things turned,
Yeah.
a hinge point, as President Nelson calls things,
Yeah.
you know, then you can expect those miracles in your life too. And it's okay to, God is a big God. It's okay to ask him for those things. He may do them in his own time. He may tell you no occasionally, but he will also grant what you're asking for if it's the right thing. So ask, you know?
And I mentioned this to you. There was a young lady, and this is sensitive, so there was a young lady who, a number of years after graduation, took her own life. Yeah. And a couple of years after that, her father came in because they were enrolling another student, one of their son, I think it was. And there had been no note, no message, anything left by this young lady. And we had a tradition at the school where one night out of the year, the senior graduating girls would sleep over in the school with a whole bunch of chaperones.
Keeping you boys away.
A whole bunch of chaperones.
Me and Brent Kaiser tried to get in.
And they were armed, and they were but we had that tradition, and I had not known it, but this particular group of girls decided we're going to sign our names on the very top of the locker. Mm-hmm. And when the father came in, I by that time had seen where the girls had all signed their name. And I said, would you like to see your daughter's name?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? So I explained what they had done. So we both got chairs and we stood up on the chairs. And right there, the very first one was, her name was here. Yeah. And he just broke down, and he thanked me for that, because he said they'd never had any message. But to him, this was her saying, I'm here, I was here, and I'm still here. Yeah. So it was, a risky thing to do, because I didn't know how it would hit him, but it touched him. So anyway.
That's great.
Yeah.
I don't know how Liahona would do today, Lance. I've told her it's probably a good thing I'm not teaching. It's, as you know, with everything we have going on in our country. And that was, my thing was talking about, we would teach world history and that, but my favorite was teaching about this country and God's hand in it. But it's
Founding Fathers, American Revolution.
It's become
Pilgrims.
very
I also
unpopular.
just remember you talking about Wycliffe and all those guys.
The reformers,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Because the reformers, if it hadn't been for Henry VIII, if it hadn't been for Joan of Arc, all of these people played a part. And I know it sounds weird, but in the foundation of America. But I don't think that would. I don't know how Liahona would do today. I don't know if I could teach the things that I taught, as with this. I think they call it cancel culture.
They do, and yet truth is still important to be told.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to teach those things anymore. So,
I
mean, I don't know that I could teach some of the things that I taught. But we don't have to worry about that now.
Yeah.
But it is something that we talk about from time to time. It's like, and I mentioned this to you, and you do what you want with this.
Yeah.
But history is not perfect. We weren't there.
And the people in it weren't perfect.
When we go back and look at history, we're visitors to that period of time. We don't see everything that was going on. We're just visiting that period of time. We don't know what they were thinking, what they were going through, what other pressures there were. We're just visiting that moment.
And we're looking at it from the concept of our day and time versus their day and time.
Yeah, seriously.
And so I don't know how it would be taught, because today with what's happened with the culture today, and rightfully so in some areas, because certain things about Black culture, about Latino culture, Native American culture have been left out of history.
Yeah.
And one of the things that used to just irritate the heck out of me is when I would teach about Native Americans, and I would read up again on all of the treaties and everything that was written, what was done to them. It would make me mad. And so I understand why people get mad when part of their history is left out. But it's gotten to where I think today we're now bordering on leaving out other things that are just important as these things. There's no reason why it all can't and should not be taught.
Yeah.
You should, but I don't know how we would fare today. I don't know. It would be an interesting challenge. I think I would get a lot of text messages and email.
Well, except that's one of the nice things about a private school.
Yeah.
Because you can go places that you can't in public school.
Yeah.
So.
I learned for the first time when I told you we were VHS, and then we were DVD, and then we were online and went live. When we finally went live was our 15th or 16th year, and for the first time in 15 years I was nervous. Yeah. Because I was not going to be able to edit out the stupid things that I accidentally said on camera.
Or is Dr. Pepper.
Or is Dr. Pepper, whatever it was. Oh, I got nailed for Dr. Pepper. But
I remember whenever I'd piss you off, I'd literally just put a can on. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
That or M&M's, one of the
M&M's
two.
were there too. But I didn't know the technology, and we had this new program where it was live, but on the side I could see the comments that kids would type in.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this, and this one girl keeps coming up time after time after time, and it's in capital letters.
Okay.
And finally I looked at the kids in class and I said, why is she putting it in capital letters? Yeah. And they said, she's yelling at you because you won't pay attention to her. I went, oh, sorry, Amy. What's your question? But yeah, there were a lot of things to learn along the way.
That has been one of the interesting things for me, because public school teachers have had such a hard time, mostly because I don't think their districts have given them the tools to be able to do distance education very well. And so kids are floundering, teachers are floundering because they don't know how to, they don't have programs that work in order to make their job easier so they can teach better, so that it's better for the DE student. But we had 22 years of experience of that, and it is a process, and you get better at it as you go along. Yeah. But I feel bad for those public school teachers.
Well, and it's not the teachers, because I've always said that some of the finest teachers you will find anywhere are in the public system. It's the system that they're strapped to, though, that makes it tough.
Yeah.
For instance, and this is the part you'll have to decide what you do with this. Tell a story that happened when I was a boy that influenced greatly how I look at this new movement called Black Lives Matter. Now, both of you are puckering going, oh, please. Edit.
No, I know where you're going.
But when I was 12 years old, we lived on a farm up in the state of Washington. And I remember my uncle and my grandfather, we all lived close to each other, a bunch of old German farmers, and they're working on a big old John Deere tractor. And I'm 12 years old doing something to the side. And I remember for the first time, I saw a black man. And he had his shirt off, and he was just chiseled in his probably mid to late 20s. And he walked up to my grandfather and my uncle. And I remember I kind of walked over because I'd never seen a black man before. And he asked them if they had any work that he could do. And it was hay season. And everybody knows if you lived on a farm, there's always work at hay season. So I said, yeah, we've got like 3 or 4 weeks of work you can do. And we had a Quonset hut. I'm assuming everybody knows what a Quonset hut is. Anyway, big metal building. In the very front, it's where you store tractors and stuff. Very front, there were some living quarters. And so that's where he would stay. And at the end of 3 weeks, 3 weeks turned into 3 months, turned into 3 years, and one day when I was, I guess, 15 or so, he and I he came up to where I was at. We worked together a lot, and he always came over to dinner. He went to church with us. Sunday dinner was always, we went everywhere together. But we went into town, this little town of 800 people where I grew up, and he said, I'm going over to the post office. He said, why don't you go get yourself a soda pop at the gas station? I went into the gas station, I came out, and in the middle of the road, spread eagle, it's a generic name, was Bob. And there were, as I remember, there were 8 FBI agents with their pistols pulled, pointed right at him. And it turns out that several years before in Georgia, Bob had pulled in with a friend to a gas station to gas up late at night. And they wouldn't let him, because he was black, they wouldn't let him use the restroom, so he went around behind to use the bathroom. Yeah. And when he was back there, he was hit over the head and knocked out cold. When he came to, he made his way around to the front of the building. His car was gone, the guy that he was with was gone, and the gas station attendant was dead. Man. They arrested him that night. 2 days later, they put him on trial. 8 of the 12 jurors were relatives of the gas station attendant who had been killed. Man. It took them 1 hour to do the whole trial and reach a verdict. They put him in jail, then put him in prison. He was there for about 6 months before he was to be executed. The night before, and this story is just, somebody needs to make a movie out of this. Mm. The night before he was to be executed, he escapes from prison. And I've heard him tell the story a dozen times. He was running as fast as he could go across fields to get away from the people, the guys he knew were coming after him. And finally he could hear they were getting closer because they had the bloodhounds out and you could hear them baying. And he ran as hard as he could. And finally he tripped and fell into a ditch. And he figured, this is it, I'm gone. And the dogs got closer and closer and closer. And finally, one of the dogs actually stepped on him as they went right over the top of him and kept on going. Man. Bob got up once they were gone, and the first thing that came to him was, I want to get as far away as I can from where I'm at. Yeah. So he hopped a train in Georgia and rode it up the state of Washington, jumped off the train, a place called Moses Lake, walked for about 10 miles. Now, he'd barely eaten anything. First people he walked up to were my uncle and my grandfather and asked him for a job. Man. Now, here's the cool thing. Yeah. He was arrested and taken to Seattle and put in prison. Georgia wanted to extradite him, take him back there and execute him. This little town of basically 800, all white, with the exception of one family that was Japanese. All white people that had nothing to do with the black man at most of their lives got together. And they started holding what were called hootenannies, where you would bring in country singers to the gym, okay. And they would donate their time and sing, and the money would be donated to his defense. My father mortgaged, he had no money, but he mortgaged our farm. Man. My grandfather took out part of a mortgage on his farm. and they hired the best attorneys they could. And I remember the day that we got news, because my mother was teaching at elementary school, and she came running out of the elementary school, and she said, because it was up to the governor to decide whether Bob was going to go back to Georgia,
Governor of Washington,
or he could stay in Washington.
Yeah.
My mother came running out and she said, Bob's free. Bob's free.
as long as he didn't leave the state of Washington.
He just could never leave the state of Washington. And I cannot tell you, and the letters that we got at that period of time were harsh because we were white and Bob was black. But it was a difficult time. And so I don't relate to what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, but I do know from stories that I wish that I could tell if I was in public school, but I don't think I could. Things are so sensitive these days, but I can tell those kind of stories at Liahona. And I remember that there was a young black boy in our last class, and I told that story. He was in tears, and this has only been 3 or 4 years ago. He was in tears, and he came up and thanked me for telling that story afterwards. But we used to call, just side note, my mother was German. German.
Very German.
Very German. And the worst thing you could ever do is call an adult, I don't care if they were 2 years older than you, never call them by their first name.
I was her daughter-in-law, and I never called her by her first name.
Yeah, you just don't call them by her first name. So
what'd you call her?
No,
I don't think I ever called
my
her.
mom. No. Well, we were married before her mom passed away. We were married for 20 years or so. I never called her by her first name. Yeah. Ever. Yeah. I just would say, hey, hey, or make a noise, look over here. But my mother was you just didn't do that back then. And so I couldn't call him by his first name. And he was so much a part of the family, we couldn't call him Mr. Yeah. So we called him Uncle. Yeah. He was Uncle Bob. Yeah. And boy, when some of the people in Georgia got a hold of that, boy, they just went ballistic on that we call. So I appreciated the fact that over the years I was able to talk about things like that and talk about religion and include God's hand in without being afraid that I was going to alienate somebody or I was going to offend somebody. Because I honestly don't think, as cool as that story is, I don't think I could tell that story these days. I just don't think I could. I'd be too, I don't know.
Worried about being canceled.
You'd fire me or something. But it is cancel culture, and that's why part of the reason that we did what we did. It's like a little bit, and you'll have experience with this. You've lied a lot.
Yes, I have.
You know how when you tell a little white lie to your parents, as a parent, most of the time when your kids are telling you a white lie. Yeah. And you'll take a little bit more and a little bit more. But there finally comes a time when you go, that's not what happened. Yeah. And you know that. And that's kind of where we got with the school and with history and other. It was like, no, okay, we can stomach that. But when they change things so much that you finally have to say, no, that's not the way it was. Yeah. That's not what happened. And guess what? We've got the books and the stories to prove it. Yeah. And that's why, we had to write our own curriculum. We couldn't find it anywhere. Yeah. They don't allow them to teach those things. So anyway, we had some interesting times, people that challenged some things. But what I appreciated, and I don't know if you remember, it's been years ago since you graduated, but I remember there was a little girl in one of the classes one time, and in one of her church classes, she was asked to write down what her most spiritual moment had been. Okay. And, everybody else would write, it was when I did this, or when I did this, or it was when, my dad, or my mom, And she wrote down,
are you having a stroke?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
That's what she wrote. But she told me, she goes, I wrote down my most spiritual moment was in my history class. Yeah. It was like, wow, that's really cool. You can combine the two. You don't have to separate them. You remember that a little bit. Yeah. Not much, probably.
It was fun to see lives changed. It was love. It was.
And I've said it before. You guys have this verve about you guys that just like people are drawn in, and you just, I don't feel like people are born into roles type of thing, but you guys are meant to be educators. You guys have touched a lot of people's lives.
Thank you.
You touched mine. You touched a lot of other people. I was going to make a dirty joke right there, but then I was like, probably not
Really
the
glad.
best place to do that.
Make sure
That's
you edit
good.
that out. Edit out.
Cut.
It's funny. I used to give when we were doing the VHS and even the DVDs,
Yeah.
and I edited, I would purposely, if I said something stupid,
Yeah.
which was quite often,
Yeah.
I would look at the camera and say to myself, edit that out,
Yeah, seriously.
and then pray that I didn't just skip by it.
Yeah, seriously.
No, I remember youth conference.
Yeah.
Remember how fun youth conference was?
Yeah.
Great speakers
Stitches.
usually.
Yeah.
Got the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
But we always had distance education students come in.
Yeah.
And, there'd be, I don't know how many kids did we usually have at them, but hundreds.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so this one little boy, you know how lonely homeschoolers can sometimes be.
kidding me?
And you were one,
Yes.
Yes,
I know.
yes,
Lance was
right?
In vivid detail.
But we don't talk about the fact nobody wanted to be around Lance, okay? We just
No, but anyway, so I don't remember what state he had come from, but obviously there weren't a lot of homeschoolers
Yeah.
and maybe a lot of social opportunities
Yeah.
wherever he was from. And he came up to me and his eyes were just huge. And he was like, Sister Degraff, there's homeschoolers here. Like a lot of them are
Yeah, they
homeschoolers.
Yeah.
yeah.
But he was so tickled to not be alone, and that
No,
was
believe me,
one of
I-
the best things about when we did the
and-
activities
and-
like super trips and youth conference, because it brought people together. That I'm not alone.
Yeah.
There are others out here doing this very same
And-
thing. Now live, when we got to go live, that
Yeah, yeah.
helped increase
Yeah.
that a lot, because then they could talk to each other.
Yeah, because the
But-
way we found out about Liahona was my cousin did a couple classes
Mm.
and stuff, and then when we moved to Utah, we were like, my dad was like, you can either stay homeschooled or you can go to Liahona, and I was like, please, for the love of everything,
Is this
that
the lesser of two
holy,
evils?
Let me go to a school, please.
But do you know how terrifying that is as owners?
Yeah.
When people come to you and say, "Well, we moved here to go to Liahona."
Yeah, it-
Oh,
It
I
would just be
hated
like,
it.
oh my gosh, the responsibility of that is
They were
terrifying.
like, no, go back, take the DE program, because that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I
We moved our
Yes.
whole family, our job,
Yeah.
because you are doing this. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
We
yeah,
tried.
it was. There was pressure there. There was.
I could imagine. Yeah.
There were times it was really scary.
Yeah.
Yep. But
And there were times that you do really stupid things on camera. You continue to point out to me. Some things are a myth, like the fact that she was waiting for me at a certain place. This,
I think I know where this is going.
well, it was one of the parents was doing a fundraiser,
Yeah.
and it was like one of these all-purpose tools that has screwdrivers and a hammer and a blade on it.
Yeah.
And so I was showing everybody on camera this cool thing, buy this, and part of the money goes to the fundraiser. And one of the kids in the back of the classroom wanted to see it.
Yep.
And so I figured I was doing everybody a favor. Why am I telling this?
I don't know.
This is just,
I mentioned this earlier, and he's like, "We're not talking about that." And then he starts talking about it.
people
I'm like,
watching this are going, wait a minute, you taught kids?
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I'm not going to just pass it back because somebody might get hurt because the blade was out. So in my mind, I think, I don't want 10 kids handling it. I'll just throw it to him. He happened to be sitting in the back of the classroom. And the word is, and I'm not sure it's true, there was a little blood, a little bit.
A little bit.
He caught the blade. Of
Hi,
all
Jeremy.
things, he couldn't catch the screwdriver, he couldn't catch the hammer part, he caught the blade. And I just remember the look on his face as the blood dribbled down, and I'm thinking, it's probably not good.
He's probably like,
Yeah. And anyway, so yeah, why did I even bring that
I
up?
don't know, but it's definitely staying. I'll just put pictures of the event on top of it.
Yeah, I can see. But,
Here's the law, or the law.
but we had moments that were fun.
Yeah.
And I guess that was the other thing, is there was a lot
No,
of
and
fun there.
that honestly, being a homeschooled kid and then being around other people and then just getting into stupid situations type thing, for me, it was a blast.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah.
We had,
well, learning ought to be fun.
Yeah.
There's
some
no
people
reason-
get very stuffy
No,
about
seriously.
it. And
you know, that's one of the problems with what the public school teachers are strapped into, is a system that requires them to teach this and this and this and this on this day.
and test on it constantly.
Yeah.
But I remember, and when we were at that evangelical church, I was teaching world history, and so we had as my backdrop, and it was made out of styrofoam but painted.
Yeah.
It looked like a castle.
I remember that, yeah.
And I had one of the students up front standing next to me. And he was having a conversation, and then he was talking to the students and talking to me, and then he was going off talking to the students. Well, while he was talking to you guys, I snuck around behind, and I went up behind where there was this window in the castle, and I stuck my head out of it. And we'll call him Jim or whatever. I said, "Psst, Jim, psst." And he turns around, and seriously, about as close to having a heart attack by an 18-year-old as you can come. His knees literally crumbled underneath. We laughed so hard. I couldn't edit it out because we weren't editing at the time, but we had fun. It was just fun to have fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's that thing that you and I talked about. My dad taught for 30 years, and when he left teaching, his students got together and they gave him a plaque that said, 30 years from now, we may not remember everything you taught us, but we will remember how you made us feel. And for me, honestly, yes, names and dates and places are important. But if you can't make that 18, 20-inch journey from the head to the heart, that's all they're going to be, are just names and dates and places. You've got to touch them.
Yeah.
And that means they've got to see your personality. That means that you've got to laugh together. Sometimes you even have to cry together. You have to talk to them about things that are emotional, that happened, sacrifices that people made, challenges that people overcame. And I think all the teachers were able to do that at Liahona with permission. Please do. Talk about what was said, what was done. Talk about these things that other people call coincidence and we call miracles. Talk about when George Washington was at Valley Forge and what it was like for them there. And we talk about the stories of the blood in the snow, but tell them the whole story of what it was like there and what they ate and what the living conditions were and what they went through. And then ask the question that I always ask the students, and I don't know if you remember, but it's like when I talked and told the story of the Alamo. And here you've got 185 young men, relatively, standing at the walls of the Alamo and looking out at 6,000 Mexican soldiers that were there. And knowing that the next day, these 185, they knew they were going to die. You're 185 against 6,000. You're not going to live. You're not going to sneak away. They knew they were going to die. And so the question...
And they had the option to leave.
Yeah.
Not sensible to stay
Travis
whatsoever.
drew the line in the sand, the proverbial line in the sand. All those with me come over. All but one crossed over. But then I always ask, why did they stay there? What was it that made them commit and stay? And it wasn't just what they knew up here, it was what they knew here. And that was, I think, what we tried to impart to the kids was, you got to feel it here. You can't just have the names and dates and places. Those are important.
But that doesn't motivate you.
Yeah.
That doesn't drive you forward. And that doesn't give you strength when times are hard.
Yeah, those guys up there on the wall at the Alamo, 1836 didn't mean squat to them. But the fact that they had come to Texas for their families, for their children, for freedom, for a new start, it was here. That's what meant something to them. That's why they stayed on that wall. And when you read some of their letters, because William Travis, the head of the Alamo, told them, write letters home to your family tonight, because tomorrow you'll die. And when you read some of their letters home to their wives and their children, you read emotion like you don't see very often, but you know then why they stayed. And your job as a teacher, ours at least at Liahona, was to relay not just the date of 1836 or 1845, but why they stayed, because someday, those students are going to face a similar wall, a similar challenge, and they're going to have to ask themselves that same question: why am I here? Why am I willing to do this? Am I willing to sacrifice? What's important to me in life?
Why am I willing to do this hard thing?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, and I guess that's a biggie to us, it wasn't just class. It wasn't just school. It was these young men and women that were pretty cool kids, to be honest with you. I know that some of them may have been a little different. but you loved them for that. But you knew they were going to face hard things, and you knew that if you just give them this, they're not going to be ready for the hard things. Give them something, and I used to say all the time, put this in your well. And when hard times come, reach down into that well and pull out one of those stories, and it'll give you strength to carry on. And that's what we did. It wasn't just about a class. It wasn't a grade. I mean, I think I used to tick some parents off because I would say, and at home I couldn't see how they were reacting, but I'd say to the kids in class and at home, I don't care what score you get on this test. You know, it's the life lesson that's important. And I could just see parents at home going, no! I could see Lance's parents going, what? Are you serious? He already believes that.
Yep.
But yeah, it was the thing. It was reach into there, pull out one of these stories that will help you get through one of these hard times, a life lesson so that you can do what you're supposed to do with this life and you won't give up. You won't quit. You'll keep on going because God didn't send you here to quit. He didn't send you here to give up. Yes, things happen, and I understand they do. But this may give you a little bit of courage to carry on another day. And it was, so I'd say, this isn't, I don't care about the paper test. It's the life test that's more important.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we taught. It's the reason you got that great D that you got, that passing highest grade you got.
Yeah, it was.
Seriously.
It was.
I don't believe that.
No, it wasn't.
Thank you, Sister Wilburn. Yes. Wilburn.
Great English teacher.
Yep, great English.
All 5'2" or 3" of her.
Yeah.
She was great though.
Yeah.